Welcome back to the channel. It's the Bald Bearded Bicyclist B3, as we can try to shorten it a little bit for ease. This is a special one. It's basically the Fireball, but this took place on July 4th at 10 o'clock. So we are calling it the Firecracker, and it starts off pretty quickly with fireworks here. Moose with an early attack. So this is not going to count in the standings for the Fireball, the series that we've been doing. But obviously, same format, 9 laps. And because it's not a part of the normal standings, I just kind of wanted to try some new stuff. And hey, make sure you're subscribed, by the way. Like, comment, all those things really help the channel. I'm trying to get more views on here so I can keep bringing content, and it really helps me out. So for this one, I was just going to play around, and so I threw an early attack, which is not really unlike me, I guess. But, you know, I wasn't really concerned with necessarily trying to play super well here. It was more about just finding opportunities to try new things. So I'm actually pushing close to 400. Now I'm up at 500 watts. I don't have a huge threshold. I wouldn't normally be pushing these watts this early in the race. But James is coming up, so I think I saw him coming and figured maybe we'd work together. But then we have Rupp, who kind of attacked over us, or at least was trying to keep the speed. So I figured I'd move over, jump on him, and even though I'm now in a group with the two of them, and in my mind slightly outnumbered, what I didn't realize was I think Honcho was joining this group as well. I wasn't as concerned with the team tactics this week, again, with it not being part of the standings. I was just kind of like, all right, let's just see what happens. And so now I am absolutely the weakest rider in this group, but just kind of happy to be along for the ride. So I am pulling probably a lot harder than I would, knowing that I'm the weakest rider in this group. But I was like, you know, let's just push myself. Was very happy to see Honcho here. This is when I realized that he was with us, but the way that he sat up made me realize that the group wasn't far behind. So I looked and they were pretty much right on us. So just a little bit further up, we got Rich pulling through with some speed, and Steve attacks again. So I thought that someone would maybe be on him and follow, and nobody did at that point. I was too far to snap to him, and we had this rental truck in the way that we had to deal with, and that was unfortunately there the whole race, but didn't become too much of a factor. But I could see that Rich kind of brought up the speed, so I'm just sitting in his wheel and waiting for him to pull off, and I'm just like, all right, cool, well, this is an opportunity for us to try and work together as a team to bring back a solo rider rather than following an attack. So it was kind of a good experience, because I think I've talked about it before in some of the races, that when we have numbers in a group behind, it may be more beneficial to just line up on the front, take turns, and bring back a rider if they're a solo rider. But what I was finding was James was sitting on the back of our group and wasn't really letting us pull through, which is smart. A little later, it got a little bit maybe contentious when it got to the point where people were more kind of pushing and shoving, which, you know, obviously is a practice for a practice race. This really doesn't mean anything, and we want to keep it safe out there, and I think we talked about it and it was all good. But, you know, personally, I think if a team is willing to put in the work and line things up and take the front, that's fine. I'm going to let them do that because, honestly, I'd rather sit on the wheel and wait until something gets brought back, and then I can just counterattack them and I'll be fresh, rather than try to interrupt the work that they're putting in. So you could see Dennis Honcho is waving us on here, and you know, we kind of had to drop to the back and then we had to jump to the front. So it was definitely interrupting the flow of us keeping pace to bring back Steve. And Rich accelerates pretty hard here. I wasn't sure whether he was maybe trying to just go solo to Steve up there, and I think I realized that that's probably not going to happen. Rupp is very strong, but I was like, you know, maybe I'll try. So I snapped a little bit, and I go really hard here to try to close this, but at some point I realized that James was on my wheel, and so I think I slowed down, knowing that he's obviously not going to help at this point, and me bringing Rupp, another teammate, is basically just going to end up with me getting countered and dropped from that group. So I'm still going a little too hard, but let's see my watts start to drop around here. So I maybe put in a little bit too much effort there. But I mean, it was worth a try to maybe try to get there solo. Deer running across. You never know what's going to happen out here on the island. So we got Honcho pulling through. That gap, unfortunately, kind of open. And I didn't have the rear camera today because I rode out from my house with it being 4th of July. I had the day off. And so I needed to have, you know, my toolkit just in case. So no rear camera. But there's just a lot of disorganization at this point as far as us trying to bring back Rupp, and it's just surgy right now. So jumping ahead a little bit more. This is the third lap. We're only 11 minutes in, but we definitely had some hard spikes here. So we're trying to kind of organize and take the front a little bit. So we've got a couple of riders that are not Scicluna people near the front too, and you know, I was kind of hoping they would help put in a little work and rotate with us. Obviously, if they want to win the race, it's in their interest to bring back Rupp as well. So we've got Honcho on the front, and then Allison and Tyler in the middle here. And maybe we could have done a better job of communicating with them as far as you know, what we needed to do here, and what we were trying to do. So, but Rich just kind of jumps around, doesn't want to take the chance of them not pulling through. But they're working a little bit and keeping the pace up. I think this is maybe one of the times that we got a little bit of help with people rotating on the front. And so behind us we've got I think there was James, Chris, Todd, and Moose. So there's 4 Scicluna team members on our pack, just kind of hanging out right now, and obviously we're committed to bringing this back. So with 4 of them kind of sitting in, like, I know that like this is not gonna end well for us. But at the same time, we gotta do what we can to try to bring him back here. So it was tough. You know, I'd be pulling, then I'd flick my elbow, and I'd realize that James was behind, and he's not gonna pull through, which, you know, I don't fault him for it. So it just kind of like kept throwing off our momentum. Hancho had to kind of spike up, obviously, to get on the front, and then James would fill in, so we couldn't really cleanly rotate here. But Rich was smart to jump back to the front, and then I followed him so that we can kind of keep it going and give Hancho a little break here. And these pulls are they're pretty hard for me. I was apparently trying to keep it at 350, and that's a lot. So I pull over. I was trying to keep them short, and again, I see James is on my wheel probably, and so no one's pulling through. And so I'm kind of in my head debating whether I should be keeping my power up, or if I should just wait until someone can come up from a little bit behind. Obviously, we got this turn here anyways that we got to deal with, so I figure I'll just go through that and then try to get the speed back up a little bit. So I think I might have been starting to get cooked here, so I wanted to go a little bit further back. But again, it's tough decision to make here, because, you know, I went further back to get some rest, but then that leaves less of my team on the front to try to rotate through and bring this solo rider back. So it's a tough decision. So, you know, I know Hancho needs some help here, so I got a little bit of time in the draft, so now I got to jump to the front. But that's almost an effort in itself, just making it back up to the front to take a pull. I had to do 400 watts just to get to the front, and then obviously that leaves me with less energy to actually pull. So we're trying to communicate and get into rotation here. It starts working a bit. The three of us are able to get on the front a couple of times here. It's so much smoother when that is the case, because you can see my watts are much lower, and I don't have to spike up as much to jump from behind to get to the front. You can see we're up in the distance there. I mean, there's been a few times that we've been about this close to him, and we kind of get knocked out of rhythm. So, you know, in past videos, I've suggested that Scicluna does this kind of stuff, like when Drew's off the front, that they just kind of get on the front and work together here. And I've mentioned before, and when I've been in the break, that, you know, my team is doing work to not let me get caught. So in that instance, what they're doing is they're just following any attacks and dissuading people from pulling, but they're not sitting and not allowing people to work. Whereas like here, this gets a little dangerous, just because, we're having to force people off the wheel so that we can just do work. I mean, we're basically trying to tire ourselves out. So I think in some regard, it's just, if the team wants to work, they can work. And again, you can have the opportunity to counter. But it's a valid tactic to try to interrupt a team trying to pull. But again, I think the main goal is just to practice different tactics here and keep people safe. So we are getting close now. This is probably the closest we've been, and probably due to the fact that we have taken a few rounds of the three of us really being on front and keeping that speed up. We'll see how long it takes to get them. So these races usually last around 40-45 minutes. We're at 22 minutes right now, and just starting lap 6 of 9. So, considering Rupp was off basically solo twice, he's been doing a hell of a lot of work. So I commend him for that. He wins most combative, I guess, for the Firecracker Race here. So at this point, I think Rich just was done with this chase, and he puts in a big effort to just close this the rest of the way. So I'm in the wheel, and I'm doing almost 500 watts. I am doing 500 watts. So yeah, he just was done with it and wanted to close it. So big effort by him. Honestly, I was hurting just being in his wheel. My heart rate's at 170. And so I know at this point that there's a counterattack coming, and I see it, and I just could not jump on it here. And if I had known that Chris was going to go, maybe I would have had a little bit of energy to bring up that speed. I thought maybe Tyler was going to be the last one. I just couldn't do it. So there, you can see their group up there. You see Todd and Rich. And I thought that it was Moose behind me yelling at me to close that, but it was Rupp. And had I known it was Rupp, I maybe would have been more willing to help from the beginning, knowing that he's done a ton of work. I thought Moose was just hanging out in the back the whole race and yelling at me to do work. So when he attacks and I see it's him, I think, he's been willing to put in a lot of work this whole race. So maybe we can close this gap, and the two of us can get to that front group. So I tell him I'll work with him, and I'm definitely weaker than him, so I know that if I'm doing anywhere near as much work as he's doing, I'm thoroughly going to hurt myself. But again, this is kind of the whole reason for this outside the standings fireball, and I figure, why not? I will just put it all out there. So unfortunately we get caught, and for a while we were just kind of like soft pedaling, and Rupp had done so much work, he was just like, whatever guys, I'll just get on the front. And he graciously just kind of like kept a pace that wasn't boring or didn't cause us to just be messing around. So after he pulled off, Rich just stayed with him, and then they kind of let Todd and I go. So we start pulling. It's the 8th lap here. So we worked together pretty much till the backside of the last lap, and then we kind of start just getting ready for a sprint. And Todd has beaten me in the sprint numerous times. I've always tended to go early, or I've gotten stuck on the front and I just make the wrong decision, do too much work. So this is us going right after the last corner, and I kind of want to just test my sprint against him heads up. So I do put myself at a slight disadvantage, even knowing that we're going to do a 2-up sprint, because the wind is always coming basically head crosswind from left to right on this final stretch. So if you're on the right side, if you're on the white line, you have an advantage. The wind wasn't too crazy this day, but in general it's always windy on the island here. So I tell him, like, I'm not gonna push him into that moving truck, so I gave him room. And I was happier to line up with him side by side than have him play games where he's hitting the brakes, and we've kind of done that before, and it gets frustrating. So we're just chatting, and he's telling me not to go too early. So I'm waiting for him to go. Power numbers are good, and I give it everything, and I couldn't tell. Honestly, the camera didn't see his wheel when we crossed, so it was really close. But we did have to go to the replay, or the people on the sidelines, and they said Todd got it. So good job to him, good sprint. And it was a fun one. And, again, we got to try new things. We got to try working together as a team to bring somebody back. I think lesson learned, we need to have someone ready for the counterattack. Luckily, Hancho was actually feeling good, and he took the win there. So thanks a lot. Like and subscribe. See you on the next one.